MLR, folks. I think it's round 14 is in the bag. We're getting closer and closer to the business end of the season. We'll go through these games pretty quickly, see where the standings are at, and you guys can let me know your thoughts on the latest round. The first one, well, DC may have got beaten, but remember, New England are currently on the longest winning run of any MLR franchise ever, and DC's season's been pretty rubbish. So the fact that they pushed these guys away from home to get a losing bonus point, I think speaks a lot for the way the team has kind of bounced back. Basically, they've been on the improve. We've been saying it for about, I want to say 6 weeks. They've certainly been getting a lot better, and that's pretty well proven. I mean, this is the bottom team in the East against the top team in the East, and it finishes as close as it did. I mean, that's despite the fact they had a yellow card early as well. So kind of encouraging signs from the DC guys. I mean, New England did get the try early, but the lead actually changed a few times. 54 minutes. DC are still in front by a point. But that main Van den Bank, the midfielder, he's having a pretty cracking season. He's got a hand in a couple of the tries. He gets one where he charges over. So New England's lead was restored, and then they didn't really put it beyond doubt until 77 minutes when McDowell went over on the left wing for New England. But it's DC here at the last say with Doug Fraser getting his second try of the match, and it's a losing bonus point. So maybe that's a fairer reflection of the game. It would have been a bit harsh on DC to come away with nothing. Not that's going to make any difference in their season, but it's certainly encouraging for the players. New England had to make more tackles. Try count finishes 4-3, so it's fair that New England get a win, but you still got to give credit to the DC guys. They are now 2-10, 11-1 for the Freejacks. Man, they are on a heck of a run. They are home to ATL next, New England. ATL are in a little bit of a rut the last couple of weeks, so what might have been a real kind of top billing game is still up there, but maybe not what it could have been if ATL had been able to continue their run. And NOLA, who are on the bye this week, await DC. The next one, Utah and ATL. Speaking of teams who've kind of been on the improve, I think we can say that for Utah now. They've beaten ATL, who, like I mentioned, aren't on their best run at the moment. They're still in the playoffs, being third in the East. But, they won't want to keep dropping games, really. Utah, though, at home, I mean, the altitude is always a thing. And they did kind of blow the scoreline out, to be fair, towards the end of the game. It maybe wasn't a fair reflection on the scoreboard, this one, because it was tit for tat for most of the game. Both sides absolutely love a maul. The ATL maul is a proper weapon. It scores a couple of tries. There's some slick ones from the backs, especially for the Utah boys. I mean, Crusade's little dink through for Markiner, who puts a foot to it and then goes over for a try, is pretty sweet. And to be honest, speaking of maul tries, maybe the best maul try of the game is actually Utah with like a 20-meter maul. It's proper crazy stuff. But yeah, like I said, when Teo gets the intercept at the end and passes the ball for, I guess he didn't want to run 80 meters, for a final try, it takes it from a 30-odd point scoreline to 44 points. So it looks worse than maybe it really was. But still, man, credit to the Utah boys for going the 80. Just kept scoring right till the death. And, they're 3-9. So like I said, it's probably a bit too little too late for their season. But they're certainly giving their home fans something to cheer about. So that's pretty pleasing. Utah are 6th in the West, just above Dallas. ATL 3rd in the East. ATL, like I mentioned, are away to New England. And Utah are away to Houston, which could be pretty interesting because if Utah's really on the improve, they'll be a good challenge for the Houston boys. The next one, Toronto against New York. This is kind of a key game because both these sides are in the playoff hunt in the East. But it's a bit of a brutal one for the Toronto boys. They're supposed to be, at least when I looked at the fixtures list, like coming home strong after setting themselves up pretty nicely with the start of the season when they were away from home. They were supposed to kind of be able to cruise maybe into the playoffs with a bunch of home games. Well, it didn't quite work out that way. New York beat them 41 points to 17. Ed Fidow on this one, I've said it loads of times, he just looks like, at times he looks like a man playing with boys. just because he looks like the big kid. If you've ever watched junior rugby, like kids playing, he just looks like that big kid who's just, I don't know. I don't mean he's physically bigger than everyone. He just seems a little bit better than everybody else. He just seems like the big kid in junior rugby who can just mop the floor with everybody. Not all the time, but at times. He's just really good, man. He gets try. He gets his hands on the ball in the lead up to some tries. I don't know what to say, man. I mean, it was a really nice looking day in Toronto, to be fair. The weather was probably the best one we've seen of all the games this week here, but yeah, man, Fidel's just too good. Toronto were chasing 17-point deficit pretty early on. I mean, Foley tapped the ball to set up their first try for, what's his name, Cole Brown, the halfback, to at least get Toronto kind of back in the hunt. But every time they would get back into it, New York would just push right away. Their offload game was pretty strong. So, yeah, man, New York way too strong in this game, despite the fact they conceded more penalties. They had 12 penalties conceded to 6. So, yeah, Toronto not able to capitalize. So, Toronto are still sitting outside of the playoffs, 4th in the East with that 6-6 record. And when you look at the teams above them, 8-4, 8-4, and 11-1. It's maybe ATL that they need to drop some more games at the moment for the Toronto boys to catch up, but they need to start winning theirs. It's as simple as that. They'll get a good chance because they're at home to Dallas next week, and Dallas, looking where they're at, should be an easy bonus point win, but in sports you do never know. And then New York are home to Seattle, who are in their own kind of playoff hunt over in the West. The next one, LA and AG. The battle of the round, maybe, in terms of the positions on the log or the table. It finishes 10-8. Pretty low-scoring one. It's only a conversion missed by AG, by McGee, which is the difference in this one. Very low-scoring game. Exchange of penalties early. Goddard gets one for LA. McGee gets one for AG, so it's 3 points apiece. Lesage gets the only try of the game for the LA boys. It's a well-worked try, to be fair, after a Dave Dennis line break and a really good conversion from wide, which is going to be crucial later on. Both sides, interestingly though, in a game like this, where you look back on it a bit harshly, sliced penalties, which were pretty straightforward ones most of the time. Both sides guilty of dropping 3. Second half, at the death, AG are pushing for ages, and eventually, with advantage there, because they're right under the sticks, they are just going phase after phase. They do get advantage. They chuck the ball wide, not like corner wide, but kind of wide, and are able to go over for the try, but they miss the conversion. So yeah, they're not able to even it up at the death, and it's a 10-8 win to LA, who are on a pretty tidy run of their own, although they likewise conceded 5 more penalties in their wins. So this week seems to be the week where the teams that had the worst disciplinary record actually managed to get the wins. LA second in the West. They got San Diego away next. AG are on the bye. They are first in the West with their 10-3 record. Only them in New England have managed to crack double-figure wins thus far. San Diego, speaking of them, and the Sabercats, Houston get a pretty good win here. They're another side that's really, really pushing, aren't they? They're trying to chase down the Seawolves for that playoff spot. Good away win. I mean, San Diego led early, but Houston would always kind of hit back, always peg them back, which is encouraging for the coaching staff when you don't let your side put their heads down. They keep wanting to fight back. The Houston blindside flanker, Gideon Van Fake, man, he's got wheels for a 6. Turnover ball, gone. Pretty unbelievable try. Maybe one of the tries of the round, especially given that he is a loose forward, not like a winger. By 55 minutes, it's still pretty close, 17-14 to the Houston boys. Marius scores one of the most bizarre tries of the round for San Diego, where essentially Houston had just scored. They restart the game. Houston just bobbled the kickoff, and Marius just pounces on it and immediately scores. It's an absolute coach killer. So 24-21, it's still a 3-point game. Hooley's penalty kicks are keeping San Diego in the game, but I mean the final score has 6 tries to 2. So without that boot, it could have been a bit of a bad day at the office. But in the end, yeah, Houston able to push on. They get that bonus point, with the 6 tries. So good for them. They need them because they're chasing down those playoffs, like I mentioned. So, for Houston, They are home to Utah next, which, as I said, could be interesting with Utah being on the rise. And San Diego, who are 5th in the West, are home to LA. That's going to be tough because LA, like I said, are in pretty good form. But we'll see. We'll see. They're certainly not going to roll over. But, yeah, speaking of rolling over, 74-7. Goodness gracious me. That's a big old hiding. Dallas' season's been pretty tough. And it just gets tougher with that one, unfortunately. I mean, good crowd in Seattle as always. Seattle is genuinely the place that always seems to get the most consistently good crowds. They only had to wait 40 seconds for Dan Creel to go over for their first try. So rewarded with that. But then, I mean, Dallas did hit back not long later. Got their first try of the game, their only try of the game, and were actually in the lead. 7-5. Hard to believe when you look at that scoreline, but it didn't last long, man. Ricard Hadding, he pounces on a loose ball. He ends up getting a couple of tries before halftime. He even gets yellow carded later on in the game, but he's having a good run. Seattle are just playing with confidence. They're able to spin the ball wide, back their skills, and it leads to a load of points. They even scored a try when Hadding was in the bin, so 11 tries to 1 is, unfortunately for the Jackals, a proper hiding. I'm already looking to next season for them. This season's pretty much a write-off, but at least they're in the league, which is more than we can say for last season. Seattle, they needed that because, as I said, Houston's chasing them down. They're 3rd in the West, away to New York next, which is going to be a big old test. And Dallas are heading back north to take on the Arrows up in Canada. But yeah, that's the most recent round. I think it's 14 for the MLR. So only a handful of games to go, a handful of rounds to go before we do hit the playoffs. It will be interesting to see which teams make it. I mean, New England and LA are in really good form. ATL's going to need to be careful. New York's a little bit inconsistent, but that's a really good result for them. The battle between Houston and Seattle will likewise be a pretty interesting one. But anyway, you guys let me know your thoughts. How do you think the playoffs are going to go out? Can you see a team like Toronto making it? Do you think anyone's going to be able to stop New England? You guys have any thoughts? And I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.